believe on the road back from Indianapolis. Rob King joins us, the voice of the Steelers. Rob, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Always a pleasure. And yes, I am on 70 heading east.
Done it before. I understand.
Yes. Yep.
So, Rob, when you go out to something like the Combine, what is the setup for you there, and then what can you do and what do you look for?
So we do radio. I do radio 4 hours a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're set up along Radio Row, which, 25 years ago might have been 2 or 3 teams, and now is filled with teams and with independent sites and all sorts of other things. So you do your radio. You're in the vast complex that is the Indiana Convention Center. That place is massive.
Yes.
I tried to I just passed the truck, so I don't know if you heard me.
I heard you.
But sorry about that. So it's a massive place. I mean, it's, our hotel was attached to it, and it was probably, I was trying to estimate today, somewhere between a half mile and 3/4 of a mile without ever going outside. So you go, you do your shows, and then, we're really fortunate, the Steelers Nation Radio, the Steelers Audio Network, to have Matt Williamson, who is a nationally regarded guy when it comes to the draft and scouting and, football in general, but this is really his wheelhouse. So we have him, but he is unbelievably plugged in. And so we're just getting all these guests who run draft sites and who are well acknowledged as draft experts and that sort of thing. So you're listening to these guys and just trying to accumulate information about, and then I see other play-by-play guys around and talk to them about their teams. But mostly I'm trying to accumulate data about what they think, these experts that Matt Williamson has in his Rolodex, what do they all think about the depth of this draft and who the Steelers might be looking at and that sort of thing. So it's a fascinating process. It's fun to be right in the middle of it. Of course, some of it becomes academic because between now and the draft is free agency, so some holes will be filled. But, anytime you can accumulate some knowledge along the way, it's never for waste.
Yeah, I always look at the draft this way. Number one, retention. Who do I keep? Number two, then how do I do in free agency and which holes do I plug in free agency and my confidence with how I was able to fill it, which then leads me to what the draft is going to be. Is that a fair way to look at it?
I think so, and I do think that perhaps, because things are never equal, right? So, right. I painted the scenario in which if you're the Steelers and you either re-signed Isaac Seumalo or went out and got a starting left guard, I certainly think they're going to attack the wide receiver position in a similar fashion to the way they attacked the defensive line position last year, which was grabbing one guy in free agency, 2 guys in the draft. I think it might be the exact same formula. But I could paint a scenario, you re-sign, a couple of your corners, maybe James Pierre and Asante Samuel. I could paint a scenario in which you wouldn't have a whole lot of needs. Pressing absolutely have to do it needs. Now, we'll see. But I think the other thing is if you begin to run out of cap space, now maybe you look forward to the draft and think, okay, well, is it possible we could either choose this player at this position or this player at another position in free agency? Then we're going to be up against the cap. What is the deeper position in the draft? Can we reasonably expect to fill that hole in the draft? So that's where I think what you're learning now, and again, it's not just now, it's now for me. These guys have been, they've got a scouting department that's been compiling lists and figuring out guys for ages. But I would imagine that could potentially have a little bit of an impact. I don't think it was accidental that the Steelers had positioned their roster in such a way that they were able to tap into some strengths of last year's draft, namely the running back position when they took Caleb Johnson and defensive line in which they drafted Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black. So I think it could be an influence, Steve. Yes, I agree with you. That's the way you go. But if you're, comparing 2 different players, maybe what's fruitful in the draft could tip you one way or the other.
In the experts you were able to talk to that take a long, hard look at these things, where is the depth of this draft where you're going to get some value late on day 2. You're going to get some value on day 3 because of the depth of a particular position.
Yeah, I got the sense as of right now, and these things could change. Remember, a year ago, and they'll change less than this time. But remember, a year ago, this was going to be the quarterback draft, right?
Yes,
there were going to be 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the first round. Now there might just be one with Mendoza. He might go first overall. Ty Simpson might not go in the first round. So I think that the positions are wide receiver, safety, inside linebacker. And to me, those are 3 positions that I think will interest the Steelers. Wide receiver is obvious, but I think that there are a lot of people, we always want to tier these things. There's usually more nuance to it than that. But I think it's very possible that, you could wait till the second round, depending upon, again, like you said, depending upon what you do in free agency. Do you go out and sign a Romeo Doubs or a Jalen Nailor? Now, maybe that need, sure, if a guy you love is there, you pounce on him in round 1. If not, maybe you take advantage of that depth if you're the Steelers and move down to round 2, which could open up other positions for the Steelers. I think safety and inside linebacker, they like to call that off-the-ball linebacker now. I don't know why inside linebacker doesn't work like it used to in the old days, but off-the-ball linebacker, inside linebacker, again, 2 positions, safety and inside linebacker, that I think will interest the Steelers a great deal. And those guys, I think you can get quality guys who you can count on to be starters in the future, or hope that you can count on to be starters in the future in that third round where the Steelers have 3 picks. So I think the draft in that regard, because there's depth at positions the Steelers will have interest in, sets up pretty well for the Steelers.
The head coach doesn't make the pick. We know that. But there's influence over the pick as to, they have an opinion on it. For the first time in 2 decades, that opinion is not coming from Mike Tomlin. Now it's coming from Mike McCarthy. Does that, in your opinion, Rob, play a role as to I'm not just talking about the first round. Everybody focuses on the first round, but how all these rounds could go?
I think so. I think it's probably, again, I think I've used the word nuance before, but I think it's going to be nuanced. I mean, look, I don't care what scheme you play and what kind of, defense you want to run. T.J. Watt is going to be valuable to your team, right? I mean, there's no, the great ones are still going to be great ones no matter what the scheme and no matter, how you, because good coaches will find a way to maximize their value, that sort of thing. I do think that as you get a little bit later in the draft, and, I don't know what the number is, Steve, but I think if I were just to, I'm going to throw out a statement and we could tweak the numbers, but there's probably going to be 2 guys on this roster who are going to benefit from the coaching change, and maybe 2 guys in the roster who are going to suffer from the coaching change. They're not going to be as highly regarded. And usually those, to me, are, if you're stacking up, hey, here's our best 11 players on defense. You're probably looking around the 7th, 8th, 9th best guy. Still a starter, but hey, we want him to do this. He doesn't quite do that. He's not really the kind of guy that we're going to shape our defense around. Mike McCarthy's made great pains, as has Patrick Graham, the new defensive coordinator, of saying they will tweak their scheme based on the roster they have, which is brilliant. But at some point, you're going to be looking for, when you get away from the true superstar athlete, okay, here's a player here, just say offensive guard. Well, maybe one offensive scheme wants a big, nasty, physical guy. Right. Another scheme values more of a guy who can move and pull out. We want to run, this. We want to be zone blocking, or we want to do trapping and pulling. So I think when you get to that, that's where you're going to see probably more, maybe in the second round, maybe more in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Hey, we got a couple guys here. We're going to exit. That doesn't mean there's not going to be good players left. Mm-hmm. We're going to X this guy off our list because he doesn't quite fit, and he's not at the caliber where we're going to kind of shape our defense around him.
Everybody gets an opportunity to see the drills, whether it's a throwing drill, a shuttle drill, or obviously the 40-yard dash. The part that fans don't get to see are the interviews behind closed doors. How important are those interviews when the Steeler brass gets an opportunity to talk to them? How do they value that part?
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable part, Stephen. A great question. I mean, I do think there's some value to see, like the 3-cone drill. So there was a really good article that The Athletic just put out. Hey, what positions are most important to the 3-cone drill? So let's say you say, okay, we value the 3-cone drill at the quarterback position. Well, now you get to see 15 straight guys doing the same drill, right? But again, keep in mind, these guys have been scouted. They've been talked to. This isn't the first time you're going to see him or the last time you're going to see him. So I don't think, if you have a solid organization, I don't think a guy vaults from the 6th round up to the 1st round. And if he does, for a team, they're probably overdrafting him. So, I do think there's value in seeing these drills. But I think that the biggest value is the two biggest things are medical and the interviews. So let's let our team doctors get a hold of this guy and see if and the Steelers have taken a couple of guys with, quote-unquote questionable medicals, Darnell Washington and Peyton Wilson. They passed their rigorous exams. They got great value, the Steelers, for both those guys for where they drafted them. Maybe other teams shy away based on their medicals. I think medicals is probably number one, followed very, very closely by interviews. And, again, you're getting a guy in a different environment. You're maybe seeing how he reacts when you're the 17th team to interview him today. Is he the same guy you saw fresh on campus down in Auburn at his pro day? So I think there's a lot of value in that, and you're getting multiple guys, not just the area scout who's already had these conversations, but you're also getting the general manager, the assistant general manager, some of the coaches are in there. So I think that's a big part of it because the Steelers want Steeler. They talk about this all the time. There's an archetype. There's a Steeler type of player. It's maybe not a tangible thing. It means a physical football player, hopefully big and fast. Not that that's, rules out a lot of teams, obviously, but a certain type of player. But that also comes with a certain type mentality. So I think that's a really important part of what happens here in Indianapolis.
And there's another element, too. We talked about the drills that they go through. Well, that's what, when these guys go to these camps, Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, right, they're working on these drills. Rob, you have no idea how many guys who, when they're finally done with pro day, will walk up to me and they'll say, good, now I can go back to football. I mean, that's what people don't realize. This is what they're training to do, is to actually get to this day or a pro day.
That's right. It's like a cottage industry. I remember watching a young man, a basketball player, very raw basketball player, Donald Foyle back in the day, really great young man. But he was preparing. Yes. This is my first real experience in watching an athlete prepare for the next level, prepare for what was coming up. Now, that was basketball, and this was a long time ago. But he was preparing not necessarily free throw shooting, which was something that he was certainly working on as a big man coming out of Colgate, but the things that were going to maybe move him up the draft board, the vertical leap, different running drills, and that kind of stuff. It's like like you said, you're preparing for the combine, not preparing to be a football player or a basketball player in the basketball version of this. And I'm sure baseball is the same way. Hey, can I go out and light up the radar gun, for the scouts that are there? So there is an element of that, but that's where the value of the area scout and the guy that's been, and again, for a lot of us, we start paying attention to this stuff around the combines, maybe the Senior Bowl, but the season's over. That's when we kind of tune into the scouting thing. Well, these guys have not only been scouting them all year, they've been scouting them since they were freshmen. They've gotten to know these guys. They've talked to these guys. They've seen what they look like out there. I do think that, teams can be tricked into thinking, wow, this guy is, look at how fast he is. I'm gonna pop a first-round grade on him. Now, for example, Sonny Styles blew the doors off of the combine. Well, everybody already knew he was a great player. What's that going to do to his draft status? He might have gone 7th. Now he's probably not getting out of the top 5. So there's going to be maybe a little bit of movement when people see just how athletic a guy like that is. But that's where the combines, I think, can trick teams a little bit too. And that's where you have to have your own scouts and your own system in place to make sure that doesn't happen. I think somebody was telling me today the Rams don't even come to the combine.
No,
they
do
don't even
not.
send anybody here.
No, they do not. They stopped doing it a couple of years ago. Now, I know, and now, have Ram scouts been at Penn State practices? Yes, because I've seen scouts from everybody. Look, you have video. Video doesn't lie, but also they bring enough scouts to a practice where I'll see them at practice, and guess what? They're at least seeing for their own eyes what the real speed, what the real football speed is as to how somebody plays, and I think that part's invaluable.
Absolutely, no doubt. And then, I learned something today that I guess they have this in the Senior Bowl and that sort of thing. And I wasn't aware of it, but they put GPS on guys in games in college, and a lot of teams are now utilizing and putting more weight into that because look, some guys they don't move as well when you put gear on them. Other guys do. Maybe it brings people down to the mean, and some people it doesn't affect at all. And so the Rams are among those teams, from my understanding. And again, I just had this conversation today. We're leaning more into that. Jacksonville now, with their Rams background, they're putting more weight into what have these guys done. But watching them in practice, watching the way they move, how seriously are they taking practice? Did they go in? So you think, okay, well, geez, the scouts here on a Tuesday, and for a Saturday game, what's he learning on a Tuesday? He's learning a lot. Did the teammates gravitate toward the guy? Did he show up on time to get treatment on that hip injury that's been bothering him? How seriously is he taking practice? Did he show up at the film study? What do the coaches think about him? There's so much that can be gained from practice. I really think that the combine is something that for most teams it's a gradation, right? It is, okay, maybe there's a little more there, or maybe there's a little less there than I thought, and that might affect, hey, I might not want him at 21. Maybe I trade down and get him at 28, or something like that. So I think there's it's more of that. I think that's what it's become. But it's still exciting. It's still great to see everybody all there and poking and prodding. I'm sure it's not that much fun for the players, but watching them work out and hearing what their how their interviews went and all that sort of stuff. It's still a great part of the off-season process.
Yeah, as an addendum to what Rob was talking about, Penn State uses the catapult system, so guys are chipped during practice and during games. It doesn't matter, a variety of sports, and it measures everything, heart rates and so forth, as to how they're going about their business. And as for practice, I'll tell you one of the things I would look for, right, is that I want to see how they react after making a couple of great plays in practice. Are they, ready to go next play? Or do they, get beat a couple times and, okay, shoulders go down and it tells me something about them. I'm going to let you drive on 70 and be safe and sound there. Rob, thanks so much. Appreciate it very much as always.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Anytime, and thanks for having me on.
The outstanding Rob King. And don't forget, the draft is in Pittsburgh this year. The draft is in Pittsburgh.